Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the February 7th meeting of the Skokie Plan Commission. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes from the last meeting. Do I have approval? Scott? Second. Okay. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion approved. Minutes have been approved. First case tonight, and the only case tonight, is case 2018-47P, zoning chapter amendment, general provisions. Is it Steve or is it Peter? It is Steve tonight. Thank you.
Okay, so you have in front of you a complete reorganization of what was mostly Division 1.1 of Article 3, which is the stuff that applies to everywhere in town, and then the stuff that applies to specific uses that aren't in specific zones. And over time, it has gotten a little unwieldy and things are out of order. It's kind of hard to find things. Also, the articles have been getting very, very long. And with online stuff, it was difficult to scroll through pages and pages, especially if you wanted to cross-reference something. So this case reorganizes everything into groups so that the stuff that applies to all, like everywhere in town, is in one section. The stuff that's for specific uses is another section. And we've also stopped putting all, like one of the articles had all these divisions in it, and we just gave everything its own individual article number. There's minor grammar and punctuation that of the sections that we affected. There was a loophole that we closed. It wasn't a loophole, it was a problem that we found out with the window well language. Now that we're having a lot of tear downs, and with the way the window wells were, the setback was, they were getting very close to the property lines and were causing side yard stuff not to flow potentially properly, and engineering had an issue with that. So we have a new regulation for that. And we reorganized antennas, just to also, again, make it so that everything, as it got amended, stuff wasn't clumped together properly, just so it's easier to read. The stormwater control ordinance hasn't been updated in a very long time. We did not do a comprehensive update of that, but we did make it match with the MWRD requirements for stormwater control. They're the organization that generally does most of the requirements, but in certain circumstances we are stricter. But it deals with that. We brought our adult use section consistent with federal case law, which is not something that we really have in town, but it's something there's a lot of case law about, and we have to just, like antennas in the FCC, we have to make it consistent with what the federal regulations are. We redid the front yard calculation for irregular front yards. What you have is the corrected language. I've sent you a separate email with what the old language was. If you want me to go through what that change was, I can. If not, that's fine. And let's see, site distance triangle. We found that the way that it was written made almost everyone's garages illegal in the back if they had a separated garage. So traditionally in the rear yard, we say that an accessory building has to be 5 foot out the alley. That gives the back out distance to be able to turn the car and so that someone can see it coming out. But the way it applied, the 15 foot or the 10 foot, depending on the zone, would also apply to that and push everyone's garages back, and we don't necessarily need that. So I fixed that. And then a bunch of number changes, and that's basically it. So if you want, I'm open to questions. Everything that is being changed is annotated on the side unless it was like a punctuation or a numbering error. So I'll just open it up for questions.
I have a question. So,
Yes.
are we supposed to read it, and it seems like I am, where I can thumb through and find like the R4 multifamily housing district runoff and permeable surface issues that are now eliminated, that seem crossed off at that section, but then I'm supposed to cross-reference back to where it talks about stormwater control requirements.
Yeah, so
where it talks generally about stormwater control.
So the part that was moved was just the part for impermeable surface. So impermeable surface rules only applied to our zone, so it really didn't belong in the general requirements. And if someone was going through and looking for something, I prefer that it's with all the rest of the our zone regulations, much like we have general requirements for business districts that say, if you're going to have outdoor storage, this is where you're allowed to do it. If you're going to have an outdoor use, this is where you can do it. Setbacks for landscaping that are only applied to B zones are in the B section. The impermeable surface stuff is only applies to R, so it's in the R, I moved it to the R section.
But it's the same general requirement.
We didn't change anything unless I noted it on the side.
So the removals, when I see that, as I do, they're just being removed from one section and moved to another.
And moved to another, yeah.
Steve,
Yes.
could you elaborate further on surface? Because sometimes we have cases where staff is trying to strongly recommend that the new development or site or new use incorporate permeable surface.
Right.
Sometimes it's a recommendation.
Most of the time,
You talked about a credit.
yeah. So the credit is normally not stuff you guys are going to see, but we didn't used to formally be able to give people credit for their driveways if they had permeable pavers. It was never an approved surface, and even if it wasn't something MWRD had previously allowed. Now that is something they're considering, so we have updated to finally, since we now have jurisdiction to be allowed to do that. On a larger development, we now can do it on the smaller things that MWRD doesn't have jurisdiction over, like a single-family house. They wouldn't do that. So there's now paving systems, like the interlocking brick that has spaces where water can drain and then filter. But then there's also pavements that drink water, permeable pavements, which is a newer technology that were never considered before. So we would say you have to park on a hard surface, and that surface had to be concrete or asphalt. Well, but then that would be considered 100% impermeable. Well, it turns out that maybe it isn't 100% impermeable, and we're allowed to work on the science of that to figure out what the credit we can give them.
Any other questions?
I had a question about
Yes.
antennas, and not because it changed, but that being a controversial thing recently, will be again. Have we looked at that recently in terms of the height of antennas, the placement of antennas in residential districts?
No. Well, no.
It's simply the same as it always was.
We haven't, we didn't make any updates this time on this. But go ahead, Pete.
We don't allow antennas as principal uses in residential districts. However, with the recent changes in the law, there are antennas coming up all over. They're small antennas, and there's a special ordinance for that. But they're in the public right-of-way, and we have no right to regulate them by zoning. So basically, we get quite a few of those applications all the time.
For small cell antennas,
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
And
that's,
they're
I would imagine also too that amateur radio antennas are exempt,
No,
towers.
no. They
The height?
are under the height regulations for accessory.
so if they're
antennas.
attached to the building, they follow the accessory
How
antenna rules?
does that coincide with PB1?
I don't know what that means, but I know that our ordinance is consistent with the FCC rules.
Oh, is it? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
that's what PB1 is.
Okay.
And then the other question goes along with that is, for a while before the crash, but since the crash we haven't had them, we had lots of wind antenna. I don't-
A wind generator?
Wind turbines?
Wind-driven things. I'm gonna call it windmills.
Windmills.
Windmills. Yeah, but
Well,
windmills.
people said they were going to build them, but I don't know how many of them actually got
We wound
constructed.
up with a few of them.
a few of them, yeah.
Actually, we have none.
No more. We
Yeah.
wound up with a few
And-
discussions of them. but
Yeah,
never-
we had a wind ordinance, which is still in here. It just got moved.
That was what I was gonna ask you about.
Yeah, that, it's still there. It's just got a different number. I think it was
And it
93.
gave them some exemption from the antenna regulation. That was my question.
Yeah, well, we don't treat them like antennas. They were treated separately, and there was a separate ordinance written
Because we
specifically
were
for that.
promoting the good of them, the positive to the environment of them, if anybody would ever do that.
Right.
Yes.
It's Section 68.
The new
Actually,
section 68.
at the board meeting on Monday night, the board passed new fees in certain areas. And we put in a specific fee for wind energy systems and solar panels and special transformers. Actually, there is no, wind generators are like 50% efficient. Now the solar panels are up to 90%. So all we're seeing is solar panels.
Right, but solar panels, we never regulated, did we?
We don't regulate them because usually they're flat on the roof, and we assume,
Or on an angled
or
roof,
an
but
angle,
they're still
but-
flat against the
Right.
angled roof.
No, we've never had any problems. If they went above the height limitation in the district, then we would have an issue with it, but they're never mounted that way.
Yeah, the only change to the text that I need to make is in section 66, which is the air conditioning condensers. We had previously modified that. that ordinance finally just got approved by the village board, but it was before I copied all this stuff. So I just have to remove one word from the title. It just has to say air conditioning condensers and add an S afterwards and strike the word regulations. So I need to amend. This is on page 23. It's the title on section 66 should just say air conditioning condensers. So it's consistent with everything else. I'd fixed it and then it just got adopted. And then I realized that when I was working off the old text, I corrected all of the content to make sure it matched, but I forgot to change the title to make it consistent.
The 6 feet from the lot line, though, is consistent with where we always were.
Yeah, it's consistent with where you just changed it. Yes, the ordinance that got adopted at the last meeting.
One other question, just because I couldn't find it easily.
That's-
Is this where we also have, but probably didn't change, the angle exiting from an alley or a public way, so that way, because we had some of those controversies previously, where people wanted to fence their side.
Yes,
of the
that's
deck.
still, it's up in the front now. That's the site distance triangle section. I did not,
Site distance triangle.
yeah, I did not change the content on that. I just moved it. Oh, actually, no, that's the same. It's section 52.
What page is
It's
that?
on page 5. I just put those in there for reference,
Yeah, it's,
so that's already there. I
And
changed the name of the
Same
article.
requirement, the staff will be telling people that.
It's 10-foot site distance triangles in residential districts, 15-foot site distance triangles everywhere else. Yeah, the definition did change a little bit just to make sure that driveways that exit into alleys are not subject to that, but they're subject to the building or accessory structure setback, which is at least 5 feet and sometimes more.
Also, there's, front yard fences are not allowed, so that's always been a situation. So, you know, that then prevents them from being in sight distance triangles also.
Wasn't a lot of this wasn't this side yard fences, which happen to be front yard, which corresponded to their front yard on Laramie, for example? Weren't those simultaneously a front and a side yard, and that's where a lot of the triangles occurred at those alleys, Peter?
Yeah, that's, I mean, on
They-
corner
they-
lots,
they
it
are-
always,
It's called a corner side
Yeah.
yard and then it's
there's-
different
there's
regulations,
side
yeah.
yard, which is really-
It's a different
it's not a
set of
front
rules.
yard.
no.
Yeah.
Right.
Corners are treated differently all over the place, so we don't treat corners the same as everything else. 'Cause
Well,
there's a bunch of-
There could be a corner front yard. I mean,
Yeah,
And that's the narrowest dimension of the lot.
so the entrance might be on the long side, which might be on the side street, but the front yard is still technically on usually the long block
Got it.
under those circumstances.
But we still have the same angle.
Yeah, no changes,
Okay,
yeah.
good.
Any other questions? Okay, very good. Well, that's a lot of work there, Steve.
This is very frustrating.
All right, now, is
I would like to make a recommendation to the manager separately to talk to the board about putting into the codifier's contract correcting cross-references when we change things, because they don't do that right now.
Now, is this an ongoing feature or a procedure, or is it?
We've been doing it in parts, but we got
We
to
have,
this
yeah.
part now where I finally had to jump in and just make this change so that we can continue to make the rest of the changes.
So it's, well, I'm sure we'll see other changes in the future,
Yeah,
too.
and we've been making ordinance amendments since
Yeah.
I've gotten here, kind of just doing it very slowly.
Things change.
And take out the you can't sell an
Hopefully for the
apple at a
better.
gas station rule, and you drive fast over the rumble strip when you exit a car wash to shake off all the water. The water must be shaken off before you leave, like all those kind of rules that were in the law.
We're talking about rumble strips. I forgot where I was. I was in a community, and instead of a speed bump, they have a speed dip.
oh geez.
Oh, not good if you drive a Corvette.
Yeah, I know. Oh, well. Any other questions, comments? Okay, I am open for a motion.
So move
Scott Berman,
approval
moved
of the new zone chapter amendment as presented. by
as
staff.
per.
As
Do I have a
amended by
sec-
staff.
Do I have a-
As presented and amended.
Yes.
do I have a second?
Second,
Second by Commissioner Franklin, thank you. I will call for the vote. Commissioner Mitchell is absent. Commissioner Quain,
Steve, I'd like to echo as well, I appreciate the painstaking work that you put into this, you and staff.
to clean this up and make it user-friendly for everyone.
So I take that as
Yes.
as an aye, thank you. Commissioner Scott Berman,
An aye and a thank you.
Commissioner Villegas,
Aye.
Commissioner Franklin,
Aye.
Commissioner Alex Potty is absent, Commissioner Jeff Berman is absent, Commissioner Matei,
Aye.
and I vote aye, and the motion passes.
Well done.
There you go. Well done,
Thank you.
and have a safe drive home. The wind has picked up, the temperature has dropped.
Easier in the
Uh,
future, so it is worth it, right?
Meeting is adjourned.
Would have been worth if I was an actual lawyer.